I think I was staring down a $380,000 tax bill. So instead, I went and bought a house and 2 more vehicles, and I got that tax bill down to 60 grand. My bookkeeper freaked out. She was like,
It's against the law. You have to pay your taxes. It's right here in the rule book. We can't do that.
I ended up getting a new bookkeeper, and I still don't pay taxes to this day. There was a time where we went up like $160 per hour. So everything went up $160.
You went
per
home
hour.
after work and you're like, let's raise prices.
You know, some people want to grow to 50 million. Some people want to grow to 100 million. Some people only want to go to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. Nothing wrong with any stage of it. But then at some point in time, you go, okay, now how do I depreciate money? What's up, man?
Jared, how you going? How you going?
How you going? I'm going pretty good. I've been going all day. But
That's good, man. I'm glad to hear it. Where are you going to?
Nowhere right now. I'm just,
Dang, dude.
just hanging out doing podcasts.
Yeah.
How are you going?
I'm going pretty good. I'm also not going anywhere.
Wow. It's so weird.
Super weird.
Yeah. What's up, man?
I was going to say we should do a podcast in like a moving truck.
We should. That'd be really funny.
Maybe.
I doubt it. It's probably just as not funny as this one.
Hey, you know what? If we're having a good time, that's half the battle.
Yeah. What are we talking about today, dude?
That's a really good question. I think one thing we wanted to talk about was sort of having 2 different businesses.
Yeah.
And they're each doing different things, but they have the same amount of people.
Okay.
And maybe one is making more money than the other, and sort of the differences between those 2 businesses.
One is making money and the other isn't making money?
Kind of,
or making smaller margins, maybe?
Yeah, because I think there's like an idea, and because you were thinking about it in the comments that you get, where it's just like, yeah, man, like I got 3 guys, we're doing $1 million a year, business is good, and it's like sort of that idea. Because I think what we want to sort of speak to the idea is maybe like you think your business is doing good, but is it really doing good?
Yeah, or could it get like, is your business doing good, but could it be doing better?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I've been like looking at that kind of stuff lately. I've been looking at all the plumbing businesses for sale. Not only do I get comments of like, well, it's me and 3 guys and we're doing, $1.2 million a year in revenue and I'm bringing home $200,000, right? Might be true. His business might profit 10% and he might be taking home $100,000 for his owner pay, right? And then you get guys like, I've been looking at businesses and it's wild, dude. Like the difference between the revenues and the cash flow and then how many people they have. Yeah. And that's what I've been looking at because I want to find businesses that have low revenue for how many individuals they have, right?
Sure.
Because I know at that point, their margins are low. Like you'll see the cash flow will be super low compared to another business that does like half the revenue with the same cash flow. So like, for instance, just as an example, I was just looking at some before this, like an hour before this. There was a business that was doing like $6 million in revenue, which is about what I'm doing with my plumbing company. And they're doing about 1.2 to 1.5 billion in profits, which is about what I'm doing with my company. And then I scroll down to how many people they have, and they have 30 people in their business.
Wow.
Residential service.
Okay, just all residential service? There's no commercial or new construction stuff in
All
there?
residential service work.
Interesting.
So we're doing the exact same thing as them, but with less than half the people. Like we have 12 right now. 12 people in the business. That's it.
You probably don't get to see a breakdown of all 30 people and what they do you?
No, you don't. So you just have to guess. Like my guess, so like looking at that, my guess would be like, okay, so their margins are pretty good still. Like they're still hitting 20% margins.
Right.
It means they're cutting costs elsewhere. So this particular business had been in business for a long, long time.
Sure.
So like you can look at that and I bet all their vans are really old. I bet they've probably got pretty good word of mouth. So maybe they don't have to rely too much on, a ton of marketing. They probably don't pay their guys very well because they've been around for a long time, right? So like if you go talk to those old business owners that have been around for a long time. They're paying less, but they kind of get away with it because they've been around so long that people trust their company, that they're going to be
Sure.
around for another 30 years, right?
Yeah. So
they feel really
technicians-
comfortable.
Yeah. Technicians trust it. Customers trust them.
Yeah, they feel really comfortable going and working there because they've been doing it for 30 years. Even though they make less money, maybe, they know they can go there, they can show up, and they're going to have a consistent paycheck, right? Because I think at the end of the day, all employees, they really just want a consistent paycheck.
Yeah. 100%.
They just want to know they're going to get paid.
Yeah. And it's not like, I would say it's not a whole lot of jobs that you show up and you're like, man, I hope I have enough work this week to keep me employed.
Yeah.
Like if I go work at a grocery store or if I'm an accountant or something like that, I'm showing up and I'm going to have work.
Yeah.
It's sort of in the service industries where you're like, hey, we might not have enough work for you this week. And you're like, oh,
Yeah, and at some companies that
Okay.
means you don't get paid.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that sucks because if you as an employee, you're just showing up to work. And then when the company says, hey, I don't have enough work for you this week and you're not going to make any money, then you're
Yeah.
like, crap. Like
Yeah.
I can imagine certain parts of my life where if my boss was like, sorry, can't pay you this week, I'd be like, okay, that's a pretty big deal. Like I'm kind of screwed right now. Like,
Yeah. Like if that happened if I was working for somebody and they were like, yeah, we don't have enough work, you got to take a couple weeks off, I'd be like, I'll see you in a couple weeks if I don't find another job.
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I'm going to go look for another job.
Yeah. 'Cause you can't just like float 2
I ain't-
weeks.
I ain't chilling for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I should take that back because there's times where I've taken like a couple months off.
Right.
So if it fell at a good time and I was like, oh, sweet, I wanted some time off anyways.
Right.
If they knew they were going to have work in 2 weeks, then it might be a different story. But
Right.
anyway,
And how much money you had in your bank, all that stuff, those personal things.
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild looking at these businesses and just seeing the difference in like revenue, cash flows, and how many employees they have. And it's going to be really interesting to go start hopping on Zoom calls with these people and asking them questions, right?
Yeah. And these are all businesses that are currently up for sale that you're looking at. Can we continue to talk about that business with the 30 employees? Just because we've talked about how they've sort of, you think, right, that they have less expenses and that is why they can still have good profit margins with a
they
ton
have
more
to.
people.
Like
Sure.
there's no other explanation, right? You can't have 30 employees all making 80,000 a year with all brand new trucks, heavily invested in marketing in your marketplace,
Right.
an owner that makes an owner's paycheck, and still have like that many employees and produce like have that good of a profit margin, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that good of cash flow. So they're either like keeping their expenses really low by paying their guys less, having less vans. Maybe the guys got to supply all their own tools, those kinds of things. Or they are cooking their books somehow, how to make their
sure.
numbers look better. And then when you actually dig into them, you're going to find out, oh, they don't actually produce this cash flow. They were fudging that number here, right? Yeah.
What do you think these 30 people are doing?
I think they're out working, dude. My guess is like this company is just underpriced.
Sure. So
They've
then
been
they
in-
have to go with volume.
Yeah, they don't even know that they're underpriced because they've been in it for 30 years. And let's say 20 years ago they bought all brand new vans.
Sure.
So they got all 2004 Chevy Expresses out in the field and they're still running. And they're all paid off and they've been paid off. You can float there, right?
Yeah.
But they should be raising their prices because they're making $1 million a year. At some point in time, 30 employees, like 25 of those or 20 of those, I would hope, are technicians.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to go buy 20 new vans at some point. It's not going to be a cheap endeavor, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, then they're going to have to go, oh, we got to actually raise our prices.
Because their expenses are going to necessarily increase.
Yeah, at some point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think and I don't know, I'd have to sit down and talk to the owners, but it'd be I'm going to be interested to see what they're doing for advertising.
Yeah. That'll probably be a really interesting conversation with, well, let me start with this. How many businesses do you plan to talk to?
So I've got 7 on the list right now.
Do you have
Yeah.
calls booked with all 7 of them?
No.
Gotcha.
Nope. Not
Which-
yet.
But these are the ones you're looking at.
Yeah, I have 7 that really piqued my interest. There's 2 categories. There's 3 categories I have them in. So there's businesses that I'm looking at that have low revenue numbers, low cash flow numbers, relatively low number of employees, like 3 to 4 employees. So usually like 2 or 3 guys out in the field and somebody in the office taking calls, whether that's the owner or an actual CSR, right?
Yeah. Real quick, let's define some terms here.
Yeah.
So low revenue, they don't have high sales.
Yeah. So they've got like 2 or 3 guys out in the field. I'll say 2 to 4, and they're hitting like 800 to $1 million, $1.5 million in revenue. And then their margins are like, their cash flow is like 10%.
Is margin and cash flow, is that interchangeable terminology?
Kind of. Like when you're looking at businesses for sale, they'll use the term cash flow because they don't want to tell you profit margins.
They don't want to use that language, or they don't want to tell you the profit margins?
They don't want to use that language because a lot of times they throw other things in there. So like they might be making $100,000 profit, but have $100,000 in owner pay, and they would count that as $200,000 in cash flow. And you don't really know until you sign an LOI and go look at their books, right?
Gotcha. So these are numbers that are sort of preliminary before you get to see their real numbers.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like curbside appeal.
Curbside appeal. They're trying to make it look as good as possible.
Sure.
Right?
To appeal to the would-be buyers.
Yep. And you just kind of have to understand that, and then go in and do your due diligence and actually learn what's going on, and then make an educated decision on how much you would be willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Why are you looking for businesses to buy?
Just because it's fun.
Okay.
No, I want to, I have my business in Alaska, but, we're in a small market. And so typically you would just go buy another business in an adjacent market and then rebrand that business to your business, right? And so I've been crunching the numbers between, startup, purchase a small business that needs turned around. So like they need to come in, like I would have to come in and raise prices, buy all new vehicles, buy some new equipment, buy tools, give the guys raises, do proper marketing, that kind of stuff. But they're up and going for the most part, and they have been up and going for a few years now, versus buying a business that is, completely up and going, but has room for growth. So kind of what I'm looking for is like somebody who is right on the edge of needing a general manager that we can go in and purchase. And yeah, we're going to pay more money for that company, but they've already got new vans. They've already got a good brand. They've already got Service Titan. They've already got a price book going. So we could go in and make relatively few changes, grow the business a bit. And it'd be a really easy thing to do, right? So more money out of pocket, but a lot less work to actually grow the company.
Gotcha.
So looking at those 3 different methods, I've kind of mapped it out on a spreadsheet of like what it looks like, what the process looks like. Kind of like worst case scenario. I've done like best case scenario, worst case scenario, and how much those scenarios cost, right? To go implement the things that we have to implement. Starting from scratch is the most expensive way to do a plumbing business, right?
Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah. But and that's for me to do that, right? Because I don't want to go work in the field.
Right.
I don't have time to go work in the field.
Right. Yeah. You can't put everything else in your life on pause to go and start taking calls all day.
And start producing cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's the most expensive because then I have to pay other people to produce that cash flow.
Yeah. So you already have to have a bunch of money up front so that you can say, hey, no, I have money for you to go do this. I know it's slow. Keep working for me. So like we don't have that conversation that we just had. Like, hey, Jared, I don't have any work. You're like, I know.
Yeah.
No money yet. Trust in me.
Just trust me. Yeah. So in that instance, I would go in like just starting out, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to start from scratch.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. For somebody who doesn't have anything else to do, who can go work in the field, makes total sense all of a sudden.
Sure.
Because you crunch those numbers and it's really not that bad.
Yeah.
Because now they don't need any money down to buy a business because they likely don't have any money.
Right.
They can go out in the field and be the one producing cash flow, which means, they're not paying somebody else to produce that cash flow.
Right.
So now all they got to do is pay themselves, not pay themselves and somebody else.
Right.
So for somebody just starting out, like starting your own thing, It makes the most sense. It takes the longest and it's the hardest, but it's pretty much your only option unless you have a ton of cash to go purchase something else, right?
Yeah. And when you say takes the longest, best case scenario, how long would it take if that person was going to start their own business?
Start from scratch? I mean, it depends on how far you want to go.
Well, let's just say get to where you're at, like 5-6 million in revenue.
I mean, you can do it in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You could. And I think that's probably a little dependent on market, like how easy it is to break into your market with advertising and stuff. So I would want to pick a good market. I would get like a marketing analysis done of the market. And then
how do you get a marketing analysis?
a lot of marketing companies will give you those, but then, I mean, you can go in like me personally, I would go in and just like check out the population, check out how many plumbers are there, check out how many of them have lots of 5-star reviews, how many of them have well-branded vehicles, nice websites, that kind of stuff. That'll give you a good idea of like how much competition there is compared to how big the population is, right? And then you can go look at median income. You can go look at, a poverty-stricken area isn't going to be as good of a place to start a business as somebody who's, typically the best kind of clients are like upper middle class,
right?
Because they have the least amount they have money, but they have the least amount of time. So they're still trading a lot of their time for money,
right?
Versus people who are a little more wealthy, they're usually not trading their time for money anymore. And so you giving them their time back, they don't care about as much as having money. I don't know.
Right.
It's a weird thing. Like you deal with ultra rich people who've got the $1 million mansions on the beach and they're the snobbiest people on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case,
Right.
but the majority of them. Versus if you deal with the upper middle class, blue collar, they're typically like, I got to get back to work.
Sure.
So I need this fixed like now.
Right.
Right.
I have no interest in doing this myself. Like, because those older generation of really wealthy people, they probably came much more from the I fix it myself.
Yeah,
And
a lot of them do.
You know, I retired and now I have more time to, like, I'm thinking of my dad who's like, he's not ultra wealthy by any means, but he's of that mind of like, I'm gonna fix stuff myself.
Yeah, but even your dad paid me to replace his water heater.
He did, because I think he tried, or I think
He
he was
did.
like figuring
He
it out.
did.
He's like, nope. So he gave it the old college try.
Yep.
And then I was like, you should just call Jared.
He got to the soldering and he was like, if this leaks, then I
Yeah.
gotta like pull this all apart again.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll just call Jared.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny.
So yeah, looking at these businesses, the middle option, so like that's startup. Startup is costly unless you can go work in the field.
Right.
The middle option there of buying a business that you can turn around is kind of cool. So it's still costly, right?
Sure.
But it's a little less costly and it's a little less work than startup.
What are the costs involved?
So like if you're going in, like I would put a business in this category, has been around for a while, doesn't have good branding, isn't on software like Service Titan, doesn't have a price book, is doing some marketing, but not like a full-blown marketing strategy, and probably underpaying their guys, probably needs some new tools. So you would have to go into this business and like day one, you'd probably want to give the guys a raise.
Sure.
So go in, give them a little bit of a raise, buy their trust, and then
definitely.
and then go in and sell all the old vans and bring in a new fleet. So there's an expense there, and then new logo, rebrand, all that good stuff. Bring in Service Titan, build out a new price book, start marketing, and then grow from there. So those ones seem cool because it's fun to take something that's old and not running so smooth and really turn it around and make it run smooth. That'd be really fun to me.
Yeah, what's funny about this is we've had conversations where you would express to me like, dude, it'd be cool to like go into these businesses. And you were at the time thinking of not plumbing businesses. You were thinking of like, I would love to go into like this style of business, see what was up with it and really fix it. Yeah. It's just kind of funny.
Turn the levers and make it happen.
Yeah, it's funny that we're having this conversation where you're considering doing that thing. I don't know. It's just funny to me.
Yeah.
talk about stuff, and then it starts to become a reality, and then you're like,
It
oh,
is
here we
funny.
are talking about it in a real sense, not just in a hypothetical sense.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun. Would be cool about that is like you would create new opportunity for the people that are already in that business.
Sure, yeah. And
That'd
you could come into it sort of with that air.
Yeah.
As you're like, because when you buy that business, you have to sell all these guys that you're like, you are a good guy.
Yep.
You are not big corporate air quotes guy who's going to come in and make this into Roto-Rooter or whatever thing they fear.
It's going to be a good place to work. We're going to take care of you.
Here's some more money. Here's some new vans.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So that one has its advantages. Number one, you can usually get those pretty cheap. And usually like nobody else wants those. So you can, a lot of times.
Why don't they want them?
Because there's so much work. Like for a larger like PE firm, they would rather go buy a business that's already producing money that then they could go scale even further and make it produce twice as much money, right? Hence increasing its worth. Like that's the game they play.
Right.
There are people that go in and snag these businesses, but it's not, they're few and far between.
Sure.
But like cool thing about that business, you get to go in and buy new vans, so you get to depreciate the vans.
Yeah.
So
You're always looking for those opportunities.
yeah, well, and if you calculate it, like at the end of the day, it's really just a wash. Like you depreciate just enough to get rid of the amount of money that you would have paid in taxes anyway. So like the amount you have to spend on getting the new vans and the amount you save on taxes is a wash.
Right.
But if you think about it, it's like, okay, I can take this money and I can give it to the IRS, or I can take this money and buy new vans and it's put into an asset that now makes me more money, right?
Yeah.
I would much rather put it into new vans.
Yeah. Can you define depreciate?
So whenever you buy a large piece of equipment, and I think there's a dollar amount or a weight rating or whatever, depending on what it is.
And this is for your business or personal?
For your business.
Okay.
But I mean, it all trickles back to your personal taxes.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Because, well, maybe walk us through that.
At the end of the day, you owe the money on the taxes. It doesn't matter where the money comes. IRS just wants their money, right?
Yeah. So the IRS looks at Jared Williams, and because Prospector profits $1 million, they're like, Jared Williams, you owe us.
Yeah, Jared
$400K or whatever.
Jared made this much money personally. One of his businesses made this much. His other business made this much. The taxes on the businesses, if they're set up as LLCs, as S corps, they're taxed a little differently, so they're a little lower tax rate. But then, they ultimately go on my tax return.
Gotcha.
And then I owe a bunch of money in taxes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I think that's helpful to know because I didn't know that until just, I don't know, probably fairly recently, just having conversations with you like, oh, it's not like your business is this other person that like pays the taxes.
No, I mean, it kind of does. Like
Right.
I just pay the taxes out of my business account.
Right.
I pay my personal and my business account.
Right,
Or
sure.
taxes, right? But when so on that, like if you start your business, you should start a LLC, which somebody's going to say that's not a license, and it's not. It's like a status or whatever. But then when you go to the IRS, you can, on the federal level, you can file for S corp status. And what that does is so if you own your business and it's a sole proprietor, that's fine in the beginning, but at some point in time, your business is going to make more money than what you need to make personally. So let's say you need to make $100,000 and now your plumbing business is now making $500,000 a year. If you're a sole proprietor, you're going to pay self-employment tax on that other $400,000.
Sure.
And self-employment tax, last I looked, and I don't know if this is accurate, it was like 9%.
Right.
It's quite a bit of money, right? So 10% is 40 grand, 9% is a little less than that. Still a lot of money, right? So
in addition to like your personal taxes?
So the business would pay you $100,000 and the business would make $400,000. You would pay taxes on the $100,000, right? The normal taxes.
Yep.
And then the business would pay the taxes on the $400,000.
Gotcha.
Right. It's all based off your income now.
Yeah.
So your income would be $500,000. You're in a pretty high tax
So you would
bracket.
jump into that bracket because your business
Yes.
made in that money. So you wouldn't be like, I'm in the $100,000 tax series of tax brackets.
Right.
You'd be into the
Yes.
top end of the tax bracket.
Yep. And so if you file for S corp status, it's the same way. Like you still make $500,000, but the $400,000 income that the business made, now you don't have to pay self-employment tax on. You only pay all the other taxes.
So then you save 9%.
You save 9%, which
Yeah.
is a big portion of money, right?
Yes.
So the second your business makes more money than you actually need to pay yourself, you need to go file for S corp status. And I'm not a tax advisor, but that's how it's worked. That's how it's worked.
That is
in
a
my
disclaimer.
life.
That is
I'm
a disclaimer.
Pretty sure if you went and asked any tax advisor, they'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense." They would probably say, "Jared," or they'd probably say, "Whoever you are, yeah, you need to file for S corp status. Like you're paying way too much in taxes."
Yeah.
So that was a little side note, but very important.
Helpful.
So yeah, depreciation basically, in that if you made 500,000, but you bought $200,000 worth of vehicles, last year you could depreciate 100% of the vehicle. So you could say, okay,
Dang.
I'm going to depreciate 200,000 worth of vehicles, which lowers my $500,000 income to $300,000, right? Basically you expense it is how that works. Like that's an easy way to understand it. So now you only have to pay taxes on 300,000 instead of 500,000.
Gotcha.
So if you're in the 30% tax bracket, you're saving 30% on $200,000, which is a lot of money. Yeah, this year now I think it's 80% this year. So you can depreciate 80% the first year, and then I believe the other 20% the next year.
So it's still 100%. It's just you can't do it all in that first year.
Right. And you don't have to do it all the first year. You can opt to do it over a 5-year period.
Those are the options, though. It's either you do it all right now or you do it over 5.
I don't know if you can split it up in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know how that works, but I know that you can definitely do it all now or do it over a 5-year period.
Yeah. What did you choose to do?
I always did it now because if you, that's something your accountant's going to be like, you should spread this over a 5-year period because you're going to need those.
Yeah.
You're going to need those, write-offs.
Yeah.
And I always told them like, look, I'm going to take the write-offs now because I got stuff I want to spend the money on now, like even more stuff to grow my business. And then I'll deal with finding stuff to write it off later. Like I'll deal with that when it comes.
Yeah. And that comes out of like an abundance philosophy right there, where you say, I'm going to find other things to depreciate later, but instead of like holding it off and then like trying to spread it all around, like you're saying take care of it now. Obviously, you're a tax guy.
And they're thinking your tax guy is thinking small. He's thinking like, okay, you made, you had a $4 million year this year, in revenue, and you made $800,000. Let's say you made 20% profit. You made $800,000. Well, if you do this good next year, you're going to have another big tax bill. And then that following year, you're going to have another big tax bill. So if you depreciate over 5 years, you can take little chunks every year.
Yeah.
And I just always said, nope, I'll take all my depreciation and then we'll figure it out next year.
Yeah, that sounds like the strategy that you outlined that your tax guy was trying to encourage. Sounds like a predictable strategy. We're like, hey, man, you can predictably reduce your tax bill by this much for the next 5 years.
Yeah, but you don't know like if year 2 or year 3 or year 4 or year 5 you have a bad year.
Yes.
And then you're depreciating part of your vehicle that you don't even need to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me. It's like I know I can get max value for it now. I'm going to take it.
Yeah. You have a bird in your hand. You're going to do whatever you do with a bird in your hand.
Yeah. And when you're growing your plumbing business, like for me, like that first, the first few months, I saved up $80K and I needed that cash.
Yeah, sure.
I needed it to grow my business.
You need every advantage you can get.
And if I would have had to pay taxes, I would have had to pay like 50 grand of that 80K to the IRS. Instead, I wrote off my vehicle and then I didn't have to pay anything. I think I'd bought 2 vehicles in that first 6 months. So I didn't have to pay taxes. Then the following year we bought, another 6 or 7 vehicles. Didn't have to pay any taxes.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to take, which that year, if I would have had to pay taxes, I would have been left with nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'd taken all the money we made over the course of the year and sunk it all back into the business. And had I not depreciated the vehicles, I would have just, all the money I had, I would have just had to give to the IRS. And to me, it was like, well, I'll keep this cash. then I got rainy day money, and I have money where I can go actually do something else with it. So it doesn't make sense to like put cash in your pocket at a future date. I would rather have the cash now because I know that I can always go make more cash at a future date. Right? Or go make more depreciation.
Yeah, and it's cool because you're operating out of like an abundance perspective. You're setting yourself up for that. Oh, in the future, I can make more money. I can depreciate more things.
Yeah.
But then it's also pushing you forward. You're forced to build your business, your portfolio, even.
Yeah.
So it keeps you forward thinking instead of keeps you on the back foot.
It's
so
like
you're just leaning forward the whole time.
Yeah. Let's take like I'm looking at buying these plumbing businesses, right? It's going to take cash.
Right.
And we're building these other businesses. It takes cash, right? And so just last year, had I not bought real estate and more vehicles, I would have paid. I think I was staring down a $380,000 tax bill, right? And so instead, I went and bought a house and 2 more vehicles, and I got that tax bill down to $60,000. I should have bought another house because then I would have paid 0 in taxes, and I could have used that $60,000 that I gave to the government on gaining another asset, right? That is slowly paying itself off, hopefully cash flowing me money, and it's there, and I can always sell it and whatever. Had I not done that though, so now I have an extra $320,000 to play with. Right. Now I can take that $320,000. I can go start another business. That business is going to make me more money. I can go buy another business. That business is going to make me money. And if you just continually keep taking the money that you were going to pay in taxes and then go purchase real estate or vehicles and find a way to depreciate, then you have extra cash left over that you can then go do more stuff with.
Yeah.
Instead of just giving it to the government and being like, well, I guess I'll make it next year.
Yeah.
Right?
It's cool because then it can line up ideologically with the idea that, well, the government isn't going to do a great job with my money. Like that's
No
my
way.
experience. So
Yeah.
if I want to be,
Have you ever been to the DMV?
I mean, the one in Pensacola it's like a nice setup.
Dude, it's a mess.
I mean, it's still slow.
I don't
Takes
think
forever.
so in Fairbanks we had the public ran DMV, the state ran DMV, and we had the private ran DMV.
Yeah.
The private ran DMV was so much better.
Yeah, it's way better.
I don't know if that and so then we moved down here. I'm like, maybe the DMV will be awesome because it's a bigger city. They got more people. Dude, it's a mess.
The only thing that they have improved upon is I can join the line online. That's the only innovation that has like made it feel like it's not a big pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But it's still like it's going to
They
take.
text you. They're like, "You're up next," and then an hour later, you're standing at the counter.
Yeah. Or for me, when I was like, "You're up in 45 minutes," I was like, "Cool, man. I'm gonna go get some breakfast." And it's like, "You're up next." I'm like, "You just
No.
That's why I had to like jump back in line."
Yeah.
But my point is like if you have that idea that the government isn't the place where you want to put all your money because you don't want to go fund all these crazy things.
Yeah.
Then as a responsible citizen, I would even say, as a responsible citizen, keep that money and reinvest it into your local endeavors.
Yes.
Because again, if you're reinvesting it into businesses, building your own business, maybe having real estate, you are now providing more opportunities to people. Like I have complained myself and listened to people complain about like, well, these landlords are just slumlords, and like, this is terrible. It's like, okay, well, if you need to depreciate so that you don't pay taxes, go buy a rental property and become not a slumlord.
Yeah.
Like run it well. You are actually going to impact your community instead of just giving that money to the government who's going to go do whatever they do with it, which isn't impacting your community in like an actually tangible, positive way.
Yeah. I would so much rather take my money and invest it myself than rely on the government to invest it in a wise fashion.
Yeah.
That's like, if this turns into a reel, we're going to get so much hate. They're going to be like, that's what's wrong with you business pigs or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's the fundamental assumption with that is the government is spending your money in a way that actually benefits you.
Yeah.
And I would challenge anybody to think that, to provide me with examples of how many things the government does is benefiting me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know I mean, this is like a rabbit trail that we could jump into for a long time.
Yeah,
but
we
like
probably shouldn't do that.
But there's just a bunch of stuff that I don't think the government is doing right now that I'm seeing like, I don't really know how that benefits me.
Yep. And if you're questioning that, just go down to the DMV and know that every part of the government runs just as poorly as the DMV.
Yes, it's just at a bigger scale.
And if
it's
your
much more
DMV is
scary.
good, let me know in the comments down below.
Yeah.
Because I want to see it.
Yeah, I want to see what that means.
Yeah.
But the opportunity you have as a business owner is to use your money in ways that can benefit your community.
Yeah.
And like that's an incredible opportunity because not everybody has that opportunity, or if they do, they don't lean into it as much as they could.
Correct. I agree. So that's how depreciation works.
Yeah, cool. So really, in layman's term, depreciation is buying something that I can write off because it makes money for my business. So it's write-offable. And then that way I don't have to pay all this money to the government.
Taxes. Correct.
Which means I have more money available for my business or for my personal portfolios or whatever.
Yep. And the only way that makes sense is if you use debt to buy the vehicles.
Okay,
right.
Walk me through.
Because if I go buy a vehicle and it costs me 80 grand, all said and done, and then I go depreciate 80 grand, it's the same as just spending 80 grand.
So
right?
if you buy like with 80 grand cash is what you're saying?
Yeah. If I spent 80 grand cash on it, I lose the 80 grand cash.
Yeah, it's gone.
And yeah, I don't have to pay taxes on the 80 grand cash, but that does me no benefit because I still am out 80 grand cash, right? Versus if you go get a loan on the 80 grand, you might have to put 5 grand down and you're out 5K in cash, but you have this, now you have this asset. I would call this an asset because it actively makes you income that can actively make you way more income than the payment on it, right? Like way more.
Oh yeah, van? Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? You're going to be paying what? Let's say you're paying like $1,800, $2,000 a month on a van.
$2,000 a month, and anybody could hop in there and bill out 50 grand a month, right? 20% profits, you're making 10 grand a month off that one
that
van,
payment,
right?
That payment's no big deal.
No big deal. And it should be built into your hourly rate anyways. Of
course.
So that, I mean, even if you were going to pay for it cash, it still should be built into your hourly rate.
Yes.
Because someday you're going to have to replace that van.
Yes.
So the best way to do it is 5 grand down, and then you go get a loan. You get to write off that 80K. So the government treats it like you spent the 80K, but in fact you still have 75,000 of that 80K, right?
So you're still making payments on it even though you depreciated it.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. Still making payments on it, but you got to depreciate the whole thing.
Yeah.
Didn't have to pay taxes on that money, and you got to keep that money in your business.
Right.
And now you can use that money to continue to grow your business.
Right. It's not quite like the government wrote you a check when you depreciated it, but it almost feels that way because they said, I won't take that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, makes total sense. So like even at the end of the year, if you're staring down the foot of a tax bill and you know that you want to grow your business some more, it might be a wise idea to think ahead and go, okay, I'm probably going to owe this much on taxes, and I should probably go buy another van so that I can get my tax burden down because I'm going to need the van anyways, right? Planning ahead like that is always a good thing.
Do you go into our coaching program?
Yeah, like it's all part of like, so I would look at this in like the profit first banking. I don't know. There's a book called Profit First for Contractors, and it basically goes into, it's a really good book. The Profit First book I read, the original one, and it's like, its whole basis is like, hey, look, you're charging for this product, and if you go out and you charge for this product and you have this much overhead, you know, if you do this banking system and you have no money left over in your expense account at the end of the month, your overhead's too much. And you got to decrease your cost of doing business. And it's cool and it's applicable in some businesses.
Right.
And then he came out with Profit First for Contractors, which is a much better book for plumbers to read because instead of going in, he goes into detail and he's like, hey, if you don't have money left over in your expense account, it's likely because you're not charging enough, right? You're not charging enough to actually cover your overhead. So he kind of flips the script there, which is good. But so basically you should be figuring out in your banking system, like, okay, I'm setting aside a certain percentage every day or every week for taxes, right?
Yeah, sure. So
So like our bank accounts, if you were to log into our online banking system, we've got a income account, an expense account, a profit account, a tax account, and an owner compensation account.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain percentages when anything comes into the income account. My wife goes in there every single day.
Mm-hmm.
She looks at how much money's in our income account.
Mm-hmm.
She goes into a spreadsheet that we have made and she puts in the number, and then it tells her how much based on a percentage goes
cool.
into each account.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right? So that we always have money set aside. We know we're making profit. We know we're setting aside for taxes. We know we're setting aside for, owner compensation.
Yeah.
And that just gives us an idea of like how much money we have that we can then go invest in other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at your tax account, you can say, I check that probably once a month. I go in and I say, okay, I look at my P&L. I'm like, we've hit this much net profit. I'm in this tax margin of like 30%. So that means I'm going to owe this much on taxes. Do I have enough in my tax account to cover those taxes where I'm at right now? If I have too much, I'll pull some out.
Gotcha.
If I don't have enough, I'll put some more in there and adjust my percentages to where I'm constantly putting away enough money for my taxes. Right. And then you can go in and you can go, okay, so now I know I'm in the 30% tax bracket. I know that I've hit, let's just say I've hit 500,000 net profits. So I'm going to owe 150,000 in taxes, right? Easy math. You don't have to pay a accountant or anybody to do this for you, or a CPA or whatever. TurboTax. I don't pay quarterly taxes either because to me it's dumb. like
they are dumb, dude.
Like I remember when I first started my business and my bookkeeper was like, "Hey, quarterly taxes are coming up. You need to pay this accountant to come look in your books and let us know how much you're going to need to pay in quarterly taxes." And so I pay this lady like $1,000 to come tell me I owe the government so much money, and that I should pay this much in quarterly taxes. And I'm like, she was wrong, first of all. And I knew she was wrong because I knew what I was going to pay in taxes, I was going to have to pay in taxes. And so I paid her all this money, and I'm like, man, what happens if you don't pay quarterly taxes? And they're like, oh, you get a fine. I'm like, how much is the fine? She's like, oh, well, it's based on like, all this stuff. It'll be like $50. And I was like, don't pay the quarterly taxes. My bookkeeper freaked out. She was like, you know who she was. She was like, it's against the law. You have to pay your taxes. It's right here in the rule book. We can't do that. I ended up getting a new bookkeeper. And I still don't pay quarterly taxes to this day.
Remember, you're not a CPA, so
I'm not a CPA, but this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Like take it or leave it. Not a CPA, not giving you
Make your own
tax
choices.
advice.
You're the only
do
one
your
responsible
own
for
research.
them.
You're the one responsible. But I will still I'll pay Q4 taxes because you can pay them like way past Q4, and usually by then I know what I'm going to owe in taxes. So it saves me the fee on the Q4 taxes. But Q1, 2, and 3, I just pay the fee. Yeah, and it's usually like a couple $100.
Which a couple $100 is like, in the grand scheme of your business.
When I could keep that cash in my account to be available to purchase things that I know are going to get me depreciation and lower my tax bill, right? Yeah. That's the game I would rather play. Hey, if you want to take your plumbing business to the next level, you're going to want to join our coaching program over at Wealthy Plumber, where you can get everything you need to grow a multi-million-dollar plumbing company, including pricing calculators, SOPs, email campaigns, and the whole 9 yards. If you want to check it out, go to wealthyplumber.com. That is wealthyplumber.com.
We were talking about depreciation,
taxes.
Right. We were
talking
summing
about
it up.
profit first.
Yep.
Like you should be looking at that stuff and then going, since you're not paying quarterly taxes and you're just setting money aside in your bank account for the end of year taxes, then you should be looking at that and going, okay, I know I'm going to owe $150,000 in taxes, right? This hypothetical business made $500,000.
Right.
They're going to have to pay $150,000 in taxes. Let's think about how we can get rid of that. So like if you're in you're in the 30% tax bracket, if you go buy a $100,000 thing that's depreciable, right? It's going to lower your overall income by $100,000. So if you made $500,000 net income, now all of a sudden you're only at $400,000 net income, and now you only have to pay 30% taxes on that $400,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So before you're paying 30% off 500 at 150,000.
Sure.
Now you're only paying 30% off 400. So that's what? What's 40 times
Could be anything,
40
dude.
times 3
Literally could be
120,000. So you just lowered your tax burden from 150 to 120
And you gained an asset.
and you gained an asset that can go make you money, and you just saved 30 grand on taxes.
Yeah.
And you likely only had to pay like 5 grand for the down payment, and maybe you put 15 into that, so 20 grand. So you're 10 grand on the upside. That's $10,000 more now you have that you can go spend on advertising or more vehicles or whatever, right?
Yep. And you knew that because the way that you, from Profit First for Contractors, you structure your bank account in a certain way so that you can essentially be like, okay, this is what my tax bill is going to be. I need to make moves this year
Yeah.
so that next year.
Profit First is more about just making sure you set it aside.
Yes.
Really, you can just figure out your tax burden by going, okay, I've made this much net income this year.
Yeah.
If I continue on this path for the rest of the year,
Right.
what tax bracket am I going to be in? Go Google the tax brackets, and then you can see how much you're going to pay percentage-wise in taxes. And then just go figure, okay, so I've made 150,000 so far this year. I'm going to owe
Sure. Yeah.
roughly this much taxes.
And then you're going to be like, predictably, I'm going to be making this much the rest of the year because that's how business goes.
Yep.
And so then and then you can start, as you say, when things come into your income account, you can start to disperse the appropriate amount into your tax account so you're covered for it.
And then you can actually go take some of that tax money that you've been putting aside and you can use it to go buy things that will lower your tax burden.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
of course.
Like that one van that cost us 20 grand to purchase an outfit and get going saved us 30 grand in taxes.
Right.
We could have taken that 20 grand from our tax account and put it into that van instead.
Right.
And it's like you didn't even lose money. Like your
Yeah, it's not
business
coming from
didn't
your
even
profit.
notice,
It's not
right?
coming from, it's already coming from a
It's coming
designated
from money
area.
that you were going to give to the government anyways.
That's our free money.
Yeah. So you need to be thinking about that. Like when you're planning your business out, when you're thinking about, okay, am I going to continue to grow? What am I going to need next year? Can I buy things now to lower my tax burden?
Yeah.
Even if you buy them a little bit before you need it, you're going to give it to the government anyways. So
Yeah, and then I want to emphasize again that it puts you in a position of positive movement.
yeah.
Because then suddenly you just bought an asset that maybe you weren't originally going to buy this year, but you were looking down.
You just
the
bought an
tax
asset.
bracket.
It costs you no money.
Right.
And now you could actually, if you had enough work, you could put somebody in there and actually go make more money.
Yep. Or
Right?
it's something where you go, man, I just bought that. I should probably get enough work so that I can use that. Because then I'm like, now I'm double dipping almost.
That's what ends up happening. You buy a vehicle because of your taxes, and then you sit there and you look at it and you're like, I should put a butt in that truck. Like it's just sitting there.
Wait, I should
What a
actually use
waste.
that thing, huh?
Yeah. So then you're like, I should go do stuff. I'm going to hire somebody, or I'm going to go do some more advertising.
Yeah.
Or whatever you got to do, right? To keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
And then like at some point in time, you get to the point where your business is at the spot you want it to be. You don't, some people want to grow to 50 million. Some people want to grow to 100 million. Some people only want to go to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. Nothing wrong with any stage of it. But then at some point in time, you go, okay, now how do I depreciate money?
Right.
And it usually ends up being real estate.
Yeah.
Like you can go buy other businesses. The businesses that you buy, like if I were to go buy this business for $1 million and I got an SBA loan and I put $100K down on it, I only get to write off that $100K on that business.
I only get
right?
to write off the down payment.
Yeah. So the only way that I would be able to depreciate money is if I bought a business that I needed to replace the vans in, right?
Sure. Gotcha.
So-
Okay. I understand.
so
So then you
that's-
would depreciate the vans, and that was where you could do that.
Yeah, and so that's why that kind of business is a little bit attractive. Number one, you get to purchase it for less money. So purchasing for less money and these businesses aren't bought as often. So
Right.
you can buy them for less and they're not bought as often, which means you can negotiate terms in your favor. So I would like to go to these people and say, hey, do you want to owner finance? I'll actually pay you more for your business if you owner finance to me.
Sure.
I'll pay you more than it's worth, right? Because I know I can go in and I can add value to this company and grow it to a point to where what I paid for it is still worth it for me, right? That's the attractive part about that style of business. A little bit of work, less money than startup.
Right.
You've got the expense of replacing all the vans, but then on the flip side of that, you get the tax break on it as well.
Yeah.
And I think it would just be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
Okay, so that's style 2 of the businesses that you're looking at. What's style 3?
Yes. So style 3 would be like business that is up and running, doing, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3, probably 2.5 to, I guess I would look at like 2.5 to 5, 2.5 to 6 even in sales million. That's already rebranded, already has nice new vehicles. It's all outfitted. They're on Service Titan, but there's room to grow in the market.
Yeah. So they're like right on the edge. Oh, there's room to grow in the market. That's kind of
there's room to grow in the market. Yeah. Or so I would look at that, but what I'm finding is there's a lot of businesses out there that have rebranded, that have Service Titan, that have 6 trucks, that have 6 guys, the owner's still the GM, and they're only doing like 2 million in revenue. And then their EBITDA is only like, or their cash flow is only like 300,000, right? So in that instance, like that business has all the pieces to be a really good business, but they're just undercharging. Like they're either underperforming, like not billing out enough hours, which is a matter of marketing, or they're billing out enough hours, but they're undercharging for those hours. And so their profit margins are small. So in that instance, it's like, okay, so this business, if I could go in there and determine if it's marketing that's holding them back, then cool. Is there room to market in the space? Like, can I produce a lot more call volume relatively quickly? Let's go do a marketing analysis.
Right.
I would have a marketing company do that. Say, okay, go do a marketing analysis. Tell me all the big competitors. Tell me what the cost per lead is. Tell me, who's doing what on what platform, like, and in what areas, right? They can tell you all that information. So I would do that, and I would go, okay, if I can increase marketing, then this is a good buy for me because I could go in. I could increase marketing. We could, probably double the amount of hours sold and double the revenue and double the profits. Like that's a good buy, right? Or if it's on the other end of like, they're just underpriced still, well, then that's even easier.
Yeah.
I just, like if they're already getting enough leads in from their marketing, I'm still going to do the marketing analysis to see if we can go even further.
Right, of course.
But you could literally just go in and just raise prices.
Right.
It's just bam, and produce like 300,000 to 400,000 extra bottom line revenue in the business, like day one, right? So that one's really attractive because it's like I just got to go pull a couple levers.
Yeah.
Like you could just go there and get it up and running really quick. And it would start producing cash really fast. Right.
Sure.
The problem with the other one where you buy it and you got to go in and do all this stuff, that stuff takes time, right? You got to start marketing. That takes time. So it's like a 6-month runway before, 6-month runway kind of worst case scenario before you are, revenue producing and you're cash flowing again.
Gotcha.
Worst case scenario.
We're in the third business scenario. What's sort of the runway to profitability? I mean, they're probably already
It's
profitable.
already profitable.
Right. And now you're just going to increase
You're just going to go in and be more profitable.
Yeah.
Right. The downside to those businesses are you're going to pay a lot more money for it.
Sure.
So it's going to take cash up front, but it's less cash. The down payment on a business like that is less cash than the cost of going in and turning a business around.
Right.
And then the other problem with that, like the other downside is the vehicles are already bought and paid for.
Yeah, you don't have anything to depreciate.
Yeah. If you can structure the sale to where you're buying the vehicles, like you're paying for the equipment of the vehicles, then you can depreciate them.
Gotcha.
But that means that the person that's selling it to you then has to pay capital gains tax on them. I believe this is how it works. And so what ends up happening is they don't want to, like when they make the sale, they want to structure it so that you're buying the business, not the assets.
Right.
Because they want to pay as little taxes on the income that they got, right? So that's downfall. And then the third downfall of that is that now you have this big business debt as well. So there's a little more risk in that because
Because you had to put a bigger down payment on it.
not a bigger down payment, but you had to take out a bigger loan for the business. Right.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
that's
like
what I meant.
that business, you might be able to buy for anywhere from, 1 to 3 million. And so you're going to go get an SBA loan. You're going to put 10% down. And then all of that money is going to be, a debt that the business carries for the next 10 years
That you're
on
going
a
to have to be
10-year
paying
term.
off. So then that's going to come out of your profits, right?
Right. Yeah. You would work that into the expense of your business
Right.
and ultimately charge your customer for that. That's what I would do, or at least a portion of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, it's not like when you build the business from day one, then you don't have this huge loan that you're also paying off at the same time.
Right.
Other than just like whatever loans you get on your vehicles and stuff like that,
Right.
which are a lot smaller than a big $1 million loan.
Right. Turnaround business, like you can go in there and you're likely not paying very much for it in the first place. Your total yearly payments on it likely aren't very much. And then the only real debt you're carrying is your vehicles, which you can always go sell. Right. So it's relatively low risk. The other business is higher risk in my mind, just because you have the large amount of debt that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree too. I think that, well, let me ask you, which one are you sort of pushing for out of the three? I mean, obviously the first one you're not going to do.
First one, I'm not doing a startup.
No, I'm not doing a startup.
There's
so then
no
it's
way.
second or the third.
Yep.
And my guess, you seem to be leaning more towards the second because
Man, I don't know. I like them both.
sure.
Like there's some businesses in that second level that you could really just go in and pull some quick levers.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of like a business that is on that second level, but more towards the first level, right? Yeah, so it just depends on like when you get in and you actually see the numbers. Right?
Yeah, that's true because once you get past curb appeal to actually see what's going on. But I mean, it's going to be interesting regardless to see like what all these things are doing. So then what's like your
It's been cool to think about. It's given me a little different perspective on, growing and scaling and costs and how to go about things.
has it made you think about your own plumbing business differently?
No, not really. I mean, like I always say, if I could do it all over again, I would have moved markets.
Right.
Like I would have picked a better market to begin with. Right. I would have just gone 300 miles south down to Anchorage and I would have grown there. I could have been twice as big as I am now and have twice as much money as I do now.
Right.
Basically. Right. But we've basically hit, like market cap in my area and we don't have the option of going to another market because the nearest market
300 miles away.
There's some towns that are Nenana's 60 miles
Still
away.
too far away for what they offer.
Oh yeah, like the market there is so small. 500 people live there.
Yeah.
Delta, you could go to Delta, but still, and the people that live there, they're a different kind of people.
Yeah.
They're not a kind of people that wants to pay top dollar for top quality service, right?
They're much more like, I built my own boiler.
Yeah, they are. They are. And they're like, oh, you just get here whenever you get here.
Yeah.
I'm home anyways because I
Yeah.
don't have a job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did some work in Delta. So Delta's like 100 miles away from Fairbanks.
Something like that.
And it's probably, how many people live in Delta?
It's got like one big road. So
It's not teeny tiny, but it's not big.
no, it's got a handful of restaurants. It's got a little airport there.
Maybe 5,000 people?
Yeah, maybe. I
10,000?
have no idea. How many homes do you think?
I don't know. Anyway, I did work there. I had this lady that was from Fairbanks that owned some homes there. She said, hey, do you want to come down to Delta? And I was like, no way. It's like an hour and a half drive. And I was like, I'm not driving an hour and a half just to go work on your stuff. She was like, what if I get enough people together to make it worth your while? And I was like, okay, if you can get enough people together. And I gave her a minimum. And she goes, okay. And she put out this community Facebook post. And she got 20 people to sign up to get at least their boiler tuned and cleaned.
Were you J-Rods at that point or were you Prospector?
I was J-Rods at that point.
Okay.
So I went down there and these people from Delta, everything's scheduled. They got text message reminders. I called them before I went to their house and nobody would ever show up to their house.
Really?
Dude, like 1 out of 4 people would be home when I showed up. It was the most frustrating thing in the world. And I'd call them and they'd be like, oh yeah, I had to run to the grocery store. I'll be back in like 45 minutes. Just hang out. And I'm like, look, lady, I planned this to a T.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out at your house for 45 minutes doing nothing. I want to go make some money. Frustrating. But those are the kind of people that are down there. They're just living on a whole different, it's a different world,
it's very
different pace.
homesteady. It's a homesteady environment where you're pretty much just living off whatever you bring in on your land.
Yeah. Neighbor helps out neighbor.
Yep. Like I said,
There's
you built your
no-
own boiler.
There's no rush for anything.
No.
Just a
Different
whole
timetable.
different world, right?
So that wouldn't be,
Wouldn't be a good market.
yeah.
So the next market's 350, like the next viable market is 350 miles away.
And at that point, it's like a startup, essentially.
It would be, totally.
Yep.
Yeah. Drive for an entire day to get there. Or, I mean, I guess you could hop on an hour plane ride.
Yeah, but then you'd have to have something to work out of when you got there.
Yeah.
And like, what technician's gonna be like, you're going to Anchorage today? Like, oh, I gotta take a plane to Anchorage to work all day to get on a plane to come home.
Yeah.
Like, dude,
No,
even with
I
like,
wouldn't do that.
even with like infinity air miles that you have.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It'd just be another startup. And it's probably a pretty good market. And I have thought about, there's actually a business for sale there in Anchorage that I was looking at. And I have thought about going there and starting something there. But then I look at the cost of it there.
Sure.
And I'm like, well, if it's 350 miles away, what's the difference if it's 2,000 miles away or 3,000 miles away? I might as well go get in like a much better market.
Yes.
Right.
One where it's cheaper just even to operate, where you don't deal with winter. I mean, Anchorage isn't Fairbanks as far as winter, but it's definitely
Yeah.
Arctic-ish climates.
You still want to like insulate your van.
Yep. You're
Like-
still going to deal with, like, actually, you're going to deal with like more gnarly snow, more gnarly roads, and higher risk of just driving around than in Fairbanks.
I'm pretty sure that I don't know of anywhere else in the lower 48 where you would need to insulate your vehicles. But in Fairbanks, Alaska, it's like 60 below and the back of that vehicle is 60 below and it just doesn't work. Like all your stuff freezes, your flux freezes, your cans of stuff freeze, everything's frozen. So we got to insulate them. We pull the floor out, put 1 inch of foam, we spray foam all the walls and ceiling. Then we put our shelves in and then we put a heater in back there.
Yep.
If I didn't have to do that, and then just like the maintenance on the heater is just another annoying thing, right?
Yeah, because if the heater goes out, then that's like your van just went down.
Maintenance on the heater, and then batteries are always dying, and then
Yeah, sure. Batteries die when it's cold.
new tires are always. Nobody thinks of going and getting their new tires like at the beginning of summer. They always go.
It's like the boiler tune thing, like we were talking about whenever we talked about that. Where
yeah,
I remember because what happens in Alaska is you get the dividend, so everybody gets this lump of money every year.
Yep.
And then they say, let's go buy tires with it.
Yep.
And the tire places are like, yep. And then you get there at, because I've done this, is you get there at 6 a.m., an hour before they open, and there's already 4 people in line.
Yep.
And then by the time they open, there's like 20, 30 people in line, like, I want my tires changed.
Yep.
And
super annoying.
everybody does that all year.
Yeah, and so do my guys that work for me. We actually started putting it on we started scheduling tire changes for that reason.
Smart.
Because it's like you can it'll take them all day if they go at that time of year, or we can just go at the beginning of the summer and it'll only take them an hour.
Yeah, because it's available.
Because nobody's there, right? So we started scheduling them every 2 years. Go at this time and get your tires changed.
Yeah.
And then when you're there, make sure you have chains in your truck. Like buy chains while you're there. Because we got to have chains because we got nasty driveways. You got to chain up your tires to get up and out on the driveways sometimes. Yeah. Pain in the butt.
So what's sort of like do you have a grand vision with buying businesses? Do you want to buy 1 plumbing business, 20 plumbing businesses?
I want to continue to get better at running businesses, plumbing businesses specifically, because I think it's a cool market, and I've already got one running so well, and we've trained other people to do it well all over the United States. So I want to prove my concept again, right? Say, I've done it here, I've done it with all these people, and I've done it again with this business.
Right.
And then, I don't know, I just want to see what it's like. I've never bought one. I've never bought one and gone and had to turn it around. So I want that experience and that learning to be able to go, okay, this is how we should do this again in the future.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
And you can just get better. And then that you can begin to systematize.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the goal. Like no matter which business I buy, I would go in and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, a business that looks like this, like here's what I did to get it going again.
Yeah.
These are the steps I took. These are all this is the checklist. This is the order we need to do them
sure.
in. And these are the things we need to think about.
That's actually super cool because it's like there's very few times in life when you get to take like broad systems and implement them into a new environment and watch them work and then go, oh, let me try that again. And then buy another business, take that system that you just tried out, the theory, refine it, and then introduce it into another environment and see how it performs.
Yeah. And then probably after like the second or third time, you could go, hey, I just bought this business. Here's the system to turn it around. Go turn it around.
Yeah.
Right. And then at that point, like if that guy's successful, let's say I send you to go turn it around. If you're successful, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's go buy 3 more. Let's go get 2 more guys.
Yeah, 2 more operators.
Here's the system, guys. You train them on how to use the system. And now we're buying, multiple businesses per year.
Right.
And really growing our income at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I agree. It sounds fun.
Sounds super fun. I think it sounds rad.
Dude, me too.
Dude, no way.
You want to keep talking about that?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's fun. Super fun.
So we have 2 businesses, right? And they're doing similar amounts of revenue, but with different amounts of material. And I mean, we sort of talked about this a little bit because I'm just trying to come back to our original question or thesis for this whole conversation.
Which was?
Really, like business A, it's almost sort of like what we first brought up. Business A is that 30-person, $6 million business. And then
Yeah, that's so crazy.
then business B is, your business with 12 people and $6 million.
Yeah.
And so we just want to like maybe walk us through sort of the differences between the two and maybe even like how it might feel. Like, how it feels at your business and how it might feel at this other business. Because I think in my mind, that's kind of where people can resonate with, where it's like, hey, if you feel this way in your business, like if it feels chaotic and if it feels like you're broke, there is a solution to the chaos and to the brokenness.
Yeah.
Because you don't seem like in your business that you feel like it's chaotic and like you're broke and all these things. Like it seems like quite the opposite.
Yeah, it is quite the opposite. It's very, like every day is pretty much the same. It's very boring. Like,
oh, you lost me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like I know like Cody Sanchez talks about buying boring businesses, right? Because boring businesses last a long time and they produce a lot of cash and they don't have much headache.
Yeah.
And I think that should be like your goal is your business is just boring, right?
Yeah.
Almost. Not that it looks boring or
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But there's like the idea, like we had one of our students ask, hey, if I fly up to Alaska, can I like come to your shop and hang out for a day? And I was like, yeah, sure, you can.
Better have something else planned while you're up there.
Yeah, but you're going to be incredibly bored and incredibly underwhelmed, right? Like you hear $6 million shop pulling down 23% profits, 10 guys, 10 trucks, general manager, 2 CSRs. You would drive to my shop and you would be like completely underwhelmed, right? Because it's a 600 square foot office that has a wall divided that we built to divide the general manager, give him his own space. And there's a spot for 2 CSRs to sit, but nobody sits there because the CSRs work from home and there's a bathroom. And then behind that, there's a 1,200 square foot shop, which is tiny. It's got 1 garage door, just enough for 1 vehicle to pull in. And we have some like drain cleaning equipment and some air conditioning equipment and some things like that. But we really don't have much in the way of like materials or parts or any of that stuff. And then above the office is the mezzanine. And up there, we just have some tables and a whiteboard and a little kitchenette and a bathroom and like a technician training board that we built. And there's going to be nobody there except for my general manager. That's it.
He's going to be like, hey, what's up?
Oh, you want the tour? And he'll give you the tour in like 2 minutes, right?
He'll be like, well, you guess you could sit behind me as I send emails.
Yeah.
Answer phone calls.
Exactly. Yeah. Be super underwhelming. Extremely underwhelming. Even if you went with one of the guys, it'd be pretty underwhelming.
Especially if you're already doing plumbing, because you'd be like, oh, this is just what I do.
Yeah. Oh, these guys, they're just like, what I think the biggest takeaway would be like, oh, they just have a system and an organized way of doing things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the system and the organization produces profits
Right.
at the end of the day.
Right. And it doesn't have to be big and flashy to do that.
No. Mm-mm. Our vans are big and flashy. Our logo's big and flashy.
Sure, of course.
I mean, the office, it's a nice space, but it's not like
You don't have
wild and
banners
crazy.
and you don't have like, there's not like a bunch of music and craziness going on.
Nope.
Eddie's not doing push-ups everywhere.
Nope. We're not up there just like pumping everybody up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, you'd come to our Monday meetings and everybody would be sitting there. We'd bring them breakfast and Eddie would go over like, hey, so-and-so, you did good with this last week. Everybody give him a hand and everybody like,
I gotta clap
Yeah.
again.
it's Monday morning.
Yeah, I don't like that.
And then he'd go over something that we need to work on for this week. And then we go over like jobs that are on pause or on hold or not completed or we're waiting on a part for some reason to make sure they don't get dropped. And then it'd be like, all right, everybody, like, what's our main goals here? Here's the 3 things we care about. And then out the door,
Yeah.
and then everybody leaves. And even during Thursday, like we do Thursday morning meetings, it's probably the only other time that people are at the shop is Thursday morning. And it's just training like, hey, everybody's just sitting there at a table and here's how we communicate to the customer and here's why and here's why we operate our business this way. And it'd be pretty underwhelming. Yeah.
I bet you'd be insightful for some, like, especially if you're coming from like the opposite of that.
I think it would be insightful. Yeah, like if you came from like talking about this other business that I was looking at that was doing very similar revenue numbers to me, but doing half the profit margins with more than twice the amount of guys, that business is probably chaotic. Like you probably
Yeah, there's
show
a
up
lot
to
of moving
work
parts.
and there's no organized system and way of doing things. There's no set scheduling system. There's no show up here and do this and this is how we do this and this is how you organize your van and here's how we do stuff. There's probably not very good software. It's probably not a very good price book. It's probably a little more chaotic, right? They're probably, my guess is that company is undercharging and it's just chaotic because they're pushing their guys to job after job after job after job. Where if they came to my company, they'd be like,
Yeah.
like
way
slow
toned
down.
Yeah.
Where they'd come in, they'd do their Monday morning meeting, and then they'd make sure their van was in order, and they would dispatch the first job, and they would take their time to serve the customer and make sure the customer was taken care of, and then they would go on to their next job. I think they'd be pretty underwhelmed, to say the least. I think it would be insightful, but underwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody wants to come to Alaska and go into my business, we've actually had 2 guys go up there and stop in the shop and be like, hey, we saw you on social media and we wanted to stop in. Wanted to talk to Jared, but I wasn't there.
Yeah. They didn't see enough of your content, clearly.
Yeah. And Eddie was like, hey, he called me that day. He's like, dude, I just had 2 guys stop in and they wanted to say hi to you. And I just gave them the tour of the shop. And I was like, what'd they think? And they were like, he said, I don't really know. I think we talked for like 2 hours, but I think they were fairly like underwhelmed.
Yeah.
They expected more out of a, $6 million producing shop. You just expect more.
Yeah. And I think that goes to like the thing that you always like to bring up, which is like keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And like really, and we've talked about this too, but it's so easy to introduce complexity into your business.
It's super
It's like
easy.
natural. It is natural to start to jazz things up and start to split. Like I find it like I'm always have to fight on splitting my focus.
Yep.
And like when you go from, let's see, the comparison might be similar, but when you go from like a physical labor job, so the comparison I want to draw is like working in the truck to working in the office. Then suddenly you have all these things in front of you and you're like, okay, I have to determine what my true priorities are. And as I'm doing that, I have to make sure not to create new things that don't really need to be done now. So I have to figure out how to focus on the main thing and then deal with that problem first until it's buttoned up before I move on to the other things.
Yeah.
And like, that's my experience. Like day to day, it's like, okay, project, right? Like, okay, I got to solve this problem, but then I'm like, oh, but wait, there's this other thing. I should probably solve this first. And then I step back, I'm like, wait a second, I haven't done anything. I've just like looked at 2 different problems and started to work at both of them and then not accomplished anything. And so then I'm like, okay, I got to reset. Like, what do we actually do? What's actually the purpose here? And it's so easy to introduce complexity in your business and just get off in la la land. And then 3 days later, you're like, I don't think I did anything for the last 3 days, or at least nothing immediately helpful.
Yeah. What ends up happening is like when you grow your business, like number one, you should try to keep it as simple as possible from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because as you scale, it's just going to get more complex. But even when you do that, like what ends up happening is you start making money and you stop having to trade your time for money. So you'll start making money and you'll start being able to, go out to lunch with your wife in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So like I remember we got to like 5 or 6 guys and me and Christelle, we started just going to lunch in the middle of the day. We would do like planning meetings and stuff, but we'd take like 2-hour lunches. We'd just be sitting there. It'd be sunny, sitting outside, eating food, drinking a good coffee. And in the back of your head, you've got guys out and they're working,
Right.
and you start to feel guilty, right? Because you're making money and you start to feel bad that it's so easy to make money. And so
Right. Because you're sitting there drinking your latte or whatever, your Americano. And
and so naturally
your
like,
hands are clean and
hands are clean and soft.
there's no poop on your boots.
There's no poop on your boots.
Or on your lapel.
Yeah. And so like the natural reaction is to like go try to find something to do.
Yeah, roll up your sleeves.
Right. So you either like go get involved in somebody else's stuff, which just messes them up.
Yeah.
Or you try to like make things more complex to give yourself something to do.
Right.
It's a weird thing that happens, but you just have to be okay with like, you can't like making money without doing the work for it, because you put in the work without
The
trading
physical
your
labor.
time for it, is okay.
And I would even say like trading your time in the currency of like physical man hours.
Yeah.
Because you still leverage your time. Like your time is like capped right now.
Yeah.
And so you're still leveraging it, but it's not at like the cost of your muscles and your body.
Yeah.
Like to do
My
things.
time is capped right now, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
My time, I could spend my time doing whatever the heck I want.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's just because I've chosen to cap my time. It's the reason my time is capped.
Right.
Just because I want to keep going, right?
Yes.
But like with like anybody who gets a $5 or $6 million plumbing shop going, they're gonna make plenty of money to not have to work. Like they don't need to work. And so
Yeah, so then the danger there is don't create all this work for you. That's just going to mess your business up, and you're going to lose that security for your guys. Like you have to think about it not just for yourself, but for your whole team.
yeah, set up simple systems that they can follow, that you don't have to be involved in, and then get out of the way and let them do their job.
Yes.
It just
Yeah.
keep it that way. On the note of like keeping it simple, me and you are both reading the book about the Ritz-Carlton customer service experience, and they have their, what do they call their card that every employee has?
Oh, I think it's like their it's right there. It's not the gold standards, but it's their, oh dude, it's like right there.
It's 3 things.
Yeah. Well, but they call it a certain thing, their Credo card.
Credo card. Yep.
Yep.
Their Credo card started as a document.
Yes.
And what they did is they went and started up a hotel, and they hired like 60 people, and they're trying to walk them through like what the Ritz-Carlton is all about. Like how do we actually provide this level of service, right? Because the Ritz-Carlton is known for its customer service.
Actually makes me want to stay at a Ritz-Carlton.
I do too. They greet you by name when you walk in the door.
Yeah.
And they greet you by name when you leave.
I mean, they're really trying to, their whole, and I mean, guys, like this is a really cool book to read if you're in the service industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of like the Ritz-Carlton is thinking about is predicting the needs of the guest.
Yeah.
And so, because again, if you show up at a hotel and that person who's greeting you, like they remember your name, they notice little things about you that they can then provide you service later, you walk away being like, holy moly, like these dudes, they remembered all my kids' names.
Yep.
They overheard a conversation I was having with my wife that I wasn't feeling so good. So they sent up a bottle of seltzer water and hot tea and this and that. Or my kid was really excited to look at this thing. And so then they set this thing up and you're like, holy moly.
Yep.
And so like there's so many transfers from that book to, I would say, just a plumbing service-based industry.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're serving a customer.
Yep.
And again, if you want to be providing, let's call it luxury service.
Yep.
then you need to be thinking like the Ritz-Carlton when you're doing it.
Yep.
And your technicians need to have these values ingrained in them. They're like, I'm going to take care of this person so well that I'm going to like predict their needs and their wants, and I'm going to be there.
Yep.
And that is when you're charging what you need to be charging. And that customer might like be apprehensive at first, but then when you offer this above service, they're like, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
Like you did it.
Worth it.
Like this was great. Like at the
Yeah.
Ritz-Carlton, you're paying more money, but what you're getting out of it, you're like, I'm only going to these places.
Yeah.
Like if I'm vacationing, I'm looking where a Ritz-Carlton is and I'm going there.
Yep. So back to the Credo card. I 100% agree with you, by the way. Back to the Credo card. It started out as a multi-page document. I don't remember how many pages. And what they found is
I think it was like 20 different things on there.
Was it? It was super hard to educate the people that they just hired on it quick enough to get them to buy into the company culture. And so they wanted them to be able to buy into the company culture within the next couple hours, right?
Yeah.
And so they created the Credo card, and it's 3 things. And it's just a really good like representation of keeping it simple, right?
Sure.
They had a 20-page document and they switched it to a card with 3 things written on it. And so in your business, like you'll tend to make things complicated, and you can always go back and simplify it.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we've seen this in my business where like we came up with all these things that we wanted the technicians to do. Like, hey, if they would just ask for reviews, then we're going to get way more reviews. Hey, if they would just knock on the door this way, or if they would just say this when they, interacted with the person, and if they would just do this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, what we ended up doing is we simplified all of that into just 3 things, right? So now all we have to preach and communicate are these 3 things. And now the technician doesn't have to think about 10 million different things.
Right.
He's only got to think about 3 things, right? And you can go a little higher level too. So it's not like ours. Sure. Ours are provide 5-star customer service, take care of the customer no matter what, charge accordingly. Those are our 3 things. That's it. And so under all of those, it's like, okay, guys, we need to charge accordingly for our service. What does that mean?
And why would we do so?
And why do we need to do that? Right. And then, okay, we need to provide 5-star quality service. Okay. What does that look like? Right. We need to take care of the customer. What does that look like? Right. And then you can just consistently train on those 3 things rather than, hey, we want you to ask for 5-star reviews, or hey, we want you to blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Why do we need to provide 5-star service? So we can get 5-star reviews, right? Why are 5-star reviews important? Do you think we should ask for them? Those kinds of things. Makes it way easier.
Yeah, because then when you keep it more simple like that, and so long as you're talking about it to your technicians regularly, then you can lead them. Well, they can feel empowered to go and accomplish those goals how they see fit, as each situation dictates.
Yeah, they're all different people.
Yeah, and they're all going to like approach a customer in a certain way. But if you give them this big litany of things to do, chances are they're going to follow the checklist because they want to please you, the owner. But they might displease the customer because that checklist is not appropriate for that customer.
Right.
And so like,
or it's not appropriate for that technician.
Yeah.
Right?
He might not be like,
he might be really uncomfortable doing it in the way that you want him to do it.
Right.
And he might have a way that's way more comfortable for him that accomplishes the same goal. And it's like, why wouldn't you want that for your employees?
Yes. Yeah,
Why
totally.
not?
Yeah. I mean, to empower your employees you trust them. Like, I think that's something that's really important is that you want to go to your employees and be like, hey man, I trust you to make the right decisions that uphold the company values. Independent of me having to like ride you about it. Like I've heard stories where there's like, a technician will complete a job and the CSR will go to dispatch to the next job. And then the CSR will ask like, hey, did you go through the checklist? Technician's like, I missed like the 4th one's like, hey, go back and get the thing. But there isn't an opportunity for that technician to be like, listen, I didn't do that because the dude was this, and the other thing. So like there's a reason why I didn't do that. And I also think it's kind of a dumb thing anyway. And sometimes you can get so tied into these systems that you put in place that are sort of could be big and unnecessary. And the technicians don't feel comfortable to like, I don't know, there isn't space for them to voice their discomfort and they're just going to be, they don't want to be there for that. So
Then
trusting them to make good choices is really important.
if anybody's worked at a Nexstar company, then they'll know what they'll know exactly what we're talking about, because it's like checklist, form, checklist.
Yeah, and I think there's certain things where checklists are really important. Like I'm thinking like in the aviation industry where you want your pilot to go through his checklist to make sure that everything is good.
Yeah.
So that thing operates safely.
But see, that's the thing. Like that pilot, for him to do his job effectively,
Yes.
he needs to go through that checklist.
And there could be carryovers. Like you probably want your technician to go through a checklist as they're finishing up that boiler tune so that everything is buttoned up in a way that is safe.
Yep.
But they don't necessarily then have to pop out the customer interaction checklist and go through like, okay, I call them ma'am or sir, check. I'm going to shake their hand no matter what, check. I'm going to like, because sometimes those things don't match that customer for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so by empowering guys with the correct value sets, and I mean, what the Ritz-Carlton does really well is they just repeatedly drill those things.
Dude,
And everybody is bought in at all levels. Like, leadership especially, but then it trickles down to everybody so that it just, your values embody your technicians.
Yep.
And then they really are honestly thinking like, how can I serve this customer? Like, you know what? The CSR communicated to me that this customer seemed flustered on the phone. You know, I'm a little ahead of schedule. I'm gonna stop by and I'm gonna call her up and be like, what kind of burrito do you want?
Yeah.
I'm stopping by, I'm grabbing lunch. You want a burrito, some coffee? Like
Flowers,
like
I'd
whatever.
if it was a woman, I'd grab flowers every time.
Nice.
Because it doesn't matter if she wanted flowers or
Right.
not. The gesture of just bringing flowers. Hey, I brought you some flowers.
Yeah.
CSR said you were a little flustered on the phone. I brought you some flowers.
Yeah.
Hope you have a better day.
Yeah, like those things, like then we can start talking about like the lifetime value of the customer. Where
Hold
suddenly you're just like,
If it's a man, bring him a burrito.
bring him the biggest burrito you can. Don't bring him flowers.
Don't bring
But
a
see,
woman a burrito.
But so if you had a checklist that said, if the customer is flustered, bring flowers.
Yeah.
And then you would have to have two segues of like, if it's man, bring burrito. If it's woman, bring flowers. And you get a technician like, I got to bring the man flowers in a burrito? Like,
What kind of burrito?
I guess this is a weird job. You know? Yeah.
Here, my boss said I got to bring you a burrito.
Yeah, I got a checklist. Can you please rate this burrito? Like, and so
Can
like,
you sign that I delivered the burrito to you?
yeah. Hold on, I got to call my CSR. Yeah, I delivered the burrito. Anyway, what's your plumbing problem? Like the checklist can get burdensome.
Yep.
But again, if the values are instilled into your guys and into your CSRs to really listen to the customers and take care of them, then those things just happen naturally.
Yeah, it's like it's providing them with the high level, like, this is what we're all about. We're about these few things. Like, this is what we're trying to accomplish in this company. This is what sets us apart from everybody else. And then here's the freedom to go do those things.
Yeah.
Like, you have the freedom to make these things happen. Because when you make these things happen, we're going to be happy.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
we're
sure.
going to be stoked. We're going to think it's awesome. I think a lot of people, they take away the freedom, whether it's in checklists or whatever. They don't want to give their guys the freedom because they're worried their guys are going to go out and do stupid stuff.
Right.
And they are. They're going to do dumb stuff every now and then. But for the most part, like, most of your people are good people. If you can bring them on and get them bought into the vision and the purpose of the company, and then you can give them the freedom to go do that, typically they're going to go out and do a really good job.
Right.
Like, they're going to go do their best. Most people. I tend to come from a position that most people are good people and they want to do a good job.
Right. Yeah.
I think a lot of plumbers, they get guys in and they're like, all these people are just terrible people. They're just crap. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And I think if they would just, number one, sell the vision, right? Sell the dream, and then give them the freedom, they would find that their employees would produce a lot better.
Yeah. And I think if you catch your thoughts thinking about that way about the current labor force, those thoughts will manifest into actions and words because that's what happens as a human being. You think things and those turn into words and those words produce action. And so when you bring somebody in your company who's a prospect and then you start kind of, oh man, I'm really happy to see that you showed up. Most guys don't show up because they all suck, you know, like I'm really happy for you to be here. Hope you did better than the last guy. He really was bad at this. Do you think you can do better? And you start to like phrase it in this way. It gets to be like you just put out that vibe of like, man, like you just don't seem like you don't have a lot of hope or friendly. I don't feel like I want to
Yeah,
work here. Like
dude.
this sounds really
Yeah.
lame to me.
I know, like all the places I ever worked, there was always limitations. Like it was never clearly stated, like, here's what this company is about, and you have the freedom to go make that happen.
Right.
Never.
Right. You are encouraged to go make that happen.
Yes. And so it was always just like, hey, what do you want me to do next? Or like, hey, this needs to be done. How do you want me to go about that?
Right.
It was never like, I could never just say, hey, this needs to be done. Here's the things we need to do. So I'm going to go buy this, and this. We're going to get homeboy working on this, and this, and that's going to accomplish this, and it's going to execute on the goal, right? So I never had the freedom to do that stuff. And it always made for weird, awkward moments and tons of unproductivity and
Right.
tons of time going back and forth with managers and tons of stupid paperwork things, just like dumb, right? I used to have to go, like if I needed materials for a job, I would have to, they wouldn't give me a computer because they didn't trust me with the computer or whatever. And so we would have to handwrite material lists. So all the foremen at this company, foreman of a job, we'd have to handwrite material lists. We'd have to fax them in the job trailer to I don't know what we called him. We called him like the mechanical general foreman. He wasn't a general foreman. He was a something. Project manager, we'll call him. Mechanical project manager. It was a general contracting company that had their own mechanical division. And then he would take those and he would fax them to 3 different supply houses. And he would get the faxes back with the parts and the material cost. And he would have to cherry pick what was cheapest on from what supplier. And so then we would get 3 different orders. Didn't care if stuff was back ordered. So like we'd get stuff in like 90 days later that was back ordered.
Just because it was cheaper on paper, and they're
Just
like,
'cause
yeah,
it
we
was-
can offer this cheaper. We don't
It
have
was
it
cheaper
though.
on paper from this supplier, but we had to wait 90 days. They didn't care. It was wild, and it was wild, and it created so much work on my end. Versus if they just would have gave me a computer, I would have just like made a spreadsheet and I would have sent it to all 3 suppliers, and I would have said, "Put your prices on this spreadsheet." I would have copied and pasted it all into one spreadsheet, and then I could have organized it by price, and I could have done the same thing, but I could have tracked it all on my end. It would have been so much faster, but they didn't want to do that.
Right.
So it's little things like that, like not. If you don't have the trust and you don't give the vision to your guys, then you just create more work for everybody. You create holdups for everybody. You create like there's like an uncertainty in your employee of I don't know what to do in this situation, so I'm not gonna do anything. Or
Yeah,
I'm afraid to do the wrong thing in this situation, so I'm gonna like pass this off to somebody else. Or I'm gonna avoid doing this thing because I don't quite know what to do, so I'm going to go do this other thing.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just going to avoid maybe the problem that is facing me, because the safer choice is to just do this thing I know I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to go sweep the floors.
Exactly. And those are like the unintended consequences that you'll never see.
No.
Right? But if you hire good people and you give them a vision and you say, go execute on this vision, usually they're pretty stoked. They're like, okay. And they've got their stuff in front of them and they get to go tackle it in a way that, goes back to your vision.
And I think another part of that's really important is like listening to your frontline coworkers, listening to your technicians, like having a structure in place where you are communicating with them a lot, because they're the ones who are actually doing the work. They're actually running through your processes.
I will say though, sometimes your employees have some pretty dumb ideas.
Yeah, and so
you got to be like, okay, think about it this way.
Yeah. So you have to have. So I think that lends to make structure to those. We'll call them like meetings, right? Because there are employees who just will talk your ear off for the whole day about something that is completely inconsequential.
Yeah.
Or
I have one of those.
yeah, he's sitting right here. Is that what you meant? No, I know. But I've had like coworkers who like, I'll ask them, hey man, how's it going? And we're into like a 45-minute conversation about like, this shelf is in a stupid place and whoever did it 15 years ago was an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is not productive.
Yep.
So like, but if you can structure where there's like a time and like run those like, we'll just call them meetings in a way where like, hey man, like what are some constructive criticisms directed towards the values and how is serving the customer and all these kinds of things. And I think if you make it a pattern that the guys know like, oh, this is when I go and sort of give my 2 cents.
Yep.
And I understand that leadership isn't always going to implement 2 cents, but I also know that sometimes they do. Because every now and again, like even that guy who is giving you opinions every day, chances are just because of the raw amount, one of those opinions you're going to be like, hey, wait a second, that could work.
It is true. Like I have gotten feedback from my guys and been like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Let's figure out how to switch that up.
And like it really builds trust if like
It does.
frontline is like, oh man, like especially if you're like a remote owner, and you get your business at that point, and frontline coworkers feel heard by the management, and then they see that change implemented and it bears fruit.
Yeah.
Then they're like, dang, I'm participating in the company.
Yeah. So I think you should just take this to another level. And it's something that we're working on in my company. We have been in the past really good at like I had an idea of how the business should run. And so I made the business run that way. Right. And it was good in the beginning. And then we went through this phase of like collecting data and learning how to improve based on data. And we would go in and we would make the changes, and everybody underneath, it was just like, these are the changes no matter what. Now I'm looking at stuff and I'm going, especially because we have multiple companies, there's more people involved.
Right.
Now I'm looking at stuff and I'm going, okay, I should go down to those. I don't want to call them lower level people.
Yeah, sure.
Because they're not. They're the frontline people. They're the ones out there doing the work, making the money.
Dude, would you say that I would say that they're just as important as you and anybody else, because without them, you don't have anything. And without you, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
So it's like,
we're all equal.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in any company where there's divisions, when there's departments, and in the airline world, you see this all the time where the pilots are like, without us, you wouldn't be anywhere. But then the mechanics are like, without us, you wouldn't be anywhere. And there's like all this infighting where it's like, guys, we all need each other.
Yeah.
Like there's no way these businesses survive. And it's just because in certain levels of really high trained labor, there becomes sort of this like, well, I'm absolutely important to everything, and without me, this company won't exist.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're absolutely correct. But without a CSR to book those calls, you have nowhere to go.
And without all the other technicians, we don't produce enough revenue to pay you what you are making right now.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I love that you're awesome
Yeah.
and keep being awesome, but also
Yeah.
we all need to be here doing the stuff we're doing.
Yeah. And so when you have that, like I think once you recognize like everybody's important, everybody's input is important. What we're doing now is instead of going in and just making changes, we're going down to, the people out in the field, the ones who it's going to affect the most.
Right.
And we're going, hey guys, here's the information we have. Here's the data we have. Here's what it's telling us. Here's what we're thinking. What do you guys think?
Right.
What should we do? What do you guys want to see done? And then getting their feedback on making those decisions, and then saying, okay, thanks for your input, and then going and making the decision.
Yeah.
Because likely when you present, rather than just saying, here's the new decision, and they're like, but why? Instead, if you go in...
Because I told you so, that's why.
Because I told you so, and I own the freaking company.
Yeah. Now do what I say, or else.
But if you go at it like, hey, here's the data.
Right.
Here's what it's telling us. Here's the outcome that we all want, right? Because that produces a better company, which produces work for you guys, stability for you guys, more money on your paycheck for you guys. And here's what we're thinking to do about it. It's like you're giving them the data to come to the same conclusion that you came to, right? And now it's not this thing you're pushing down from the top. It's this thing that you're coming to them and they're agreeing with you to implement, right? I think that's a much better way to go about it.
And I mean, I completely agree. And what I found in my personal experience is that whenever you do that, you're building equity. And there are moments in your business when you need to cash that equity by saying, hey guys, we need to change it. And it's this way because it is. And if you have a track record of equity of saying we make like communal decisions because it is the right thing to do. But there are moments when as a business owner, like, guys, I don't care what you say. This is going to go this way. But if you have that equity, you just cash it, because I've made working for the airline, like I would do that all the time. I'd get buy-in, make sure everybody was sold, because I didn't want to have to push guys to do the ideas. I wanted them to do it. But there are moments where I'm like, hey, I'm just going to try something. And I'd be having guys being like, okay, think it's going to suck. And I'm like, please just try it. And they'd be like, we'll try it.
Yeah.
And I would cash the equity and it would either succeed or usually it would fail because I didn't see something.
Yeah.
But they still did it.
Yeah.
And nobody grumbled.
It'd be like if you went and asked any of my technicians like how we could sell more work, they would all tell you to lower prices. Every single one of them. Yeah. They'd be like, if you lower prices, you're gonna get more work. And I would just present the data and be like, actually, and we've had lower prices and we didn't sell more work. We actually sell more work at higher prices now. What do you think about that? And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I would have gone to them every time I needed to raise prices,
Oh, yeah.
you think I would have got their buy-in? No way.
No.
It's already uncomfortable for them to go bill a customer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there was a time where we went from 400 and we went up like $160 in overnight, right? So per hour. So everything went up $160.
You went
per
home
hour.
after work and you're like, let's raise prices.
So
And
I
then-
went home after work and I was crunching numbers and I was like, dang man, we're undercharging. We need to charge more. And next day we were charging more, right? If I would have went to all my technicians and be like, hey man, we got to raise prices $160 an hour. What do you guys think? Here's the data. They would have been like, no, you can't do that.
I'm too scared.
There's
Too
no
scared.
way. But they didn't even notice.
Yeah.
They just noticed like, why is this more expensive today? Yeah, prices went up. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. And I mean, that's just part of like doing it and learning and like learning your company and learning your style and your strengths to
Yeah.
know what decisions you make with buy-in and what decisions that you just make because, well, you just got to make them and you just got to pull that trigger.
Yep.
And sometimes you'll make the wrong decision and you still gain equity when you make a mistake and you go to your employees and you're like, guys, I messed up. That's on me. Like we
So-
went the wrong way.
But imagine the equity you're making when you get their buy-in and then you come back with the data and be like, guys, we made the wrong decision. Like you're like, that's way better than you making the decision
sure.
and it's wrong. It's way better if both of you made the decision together and it's the wrong decision, right?
I mean, yeah, in that state, they're going to trust your independent decisions way more next time.
Yeah.
Just because, but either way, like you're taking responsibility for a mistake and you're really humbling yourself to the people that you're serving, your employees. And they're going to appreciate that. And they're going to trust you to make a better decision next time because you've identified to them publicly where you made a mistake. Like, I don't really see any weaknesses and be like, hey guys, I made a mistake.
Yeah, I think some employers, they tend to, I don't know if it's like all employers, but like in the business world, like owners that I've talked to, they're very scared to be just real and open and honest with their employees of like, hey, here's the deal. Like, here's how it is, like for real. Like, here's the behind the curtains look at like how the business operates, why it operates, like all of the things, right? And I think if they would do that, their employees would have a much greater understanding of why we do the things that we do.
Which is super important.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
In my experience, like my highest performing employees I've ever had are the ones who care the most about why we do the things that we do.
Yeah.
And if I could answer that well, one, it knows that I know what I'm talking about and I feel good in my decisions. And then they go, cool, man. Thanks for sharing with me. That's really important. I will go and achieve your vision because I believe in it.
Yeah.
But if you just don't give them the why, one, you might not actually understand what you're doing. And two, your employees are gonna be like, I don't really care. I don't understand. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Because nothing sucks more than arbitrary work.
No, yeah. Arbitrary work, like work with no purpose,
Yeah.
is terrible.
And sometimes there is purpose, but they just don't know it.
Yep.
And that just takes you slowing down, taking the time to explain the why.
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, thanks. I didn't know why we, don't keep stock at the shop or whatever.
Because Jared doesn't like
Because
it.
Jared doesn't like it. Because Jared said so. That's why.
I've thrown away so much stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah.
Just get tyrannical with it.
Dude, I do. And that's like one of the things that I had to get tyrannical with because stuff would show up at the shop and it would sit there for months on end. And I was like, you know what? If we keep doing this, we're going to have mountains of stuff at the shop.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to get a bigger shop and then somebody just to organize all the stuff. just because I let stuff come into the shop.
Did you get buy-in with your guys when you were?
No.
That was one of those moments where I was like, I don't care.
They came in and they'd be like, hey, where's the, 200 2-inch 45s I bought? And I'd be like, they're in the dumpster. Why did you buy those?
Well,
Because they're like 2 days out from the supplier and we have to order them. And if we need them, now we got them. And I'm like, no, if they're 2 days out, wait 2 days. Just tell the customer you got to wait 2 days. Nobody else is stocking these. Like, how often are you going to use those? Like once a year?
well, that's why I want them here.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why you got to be tyrannical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully
you have enough equity that you can float the,
that's
the
probably
tyrannical move.
That's probably one of the only things I've ever been tyrannical about is don't bring parts to the shop, return them. Don't want to be a parts shop. We go do service work.
Yeah.
Right. We're in the service business, not the part stocking business. And then we have to take care of our customers and we have to bill them accordingly. End of story. Those are my only tyrannical things. That's it.
Well, it's good to know that you know where you're tyrannical and then you know where you're not.
Thanks.
Dude, I got you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool, man.
Well, we didn't really talk about what it feels. Well, we started talking about what it feels like if you're in a business that's 30 people, not.
It's Gedak. You don't have systems.
Yeah.
You don't have a way of doing things. And so it feels like you don't have a way of doing things.
Yeah, it probably feels really busy.
Yep.
Probably uncertain, I
Probably
would say.
uncertain, busy. You don't know if you're making money. You don't know 100% if everybody's happy. You don't know if your customers are happy. You don't even know half the time if the work is getting done.
Yeah, sure. There's
you're
just
the
so much
owner-
going on. Yeah.
If you're the owner or the manager, you're likely like feel like a chicken with your head cut off because you're constantly having to go over here and go over there and make sure this guy's got that stuff. And
Yeah.
it really should be more of a systemized fashion of doing things.
Yeah.
You just need to calm down, slow down, and come up with an actual process for the way that your business runs. And it'll be much less chaotic.
Yeah.
You won't feel like a chicken with your head cut off. You'll actually once you're bringing in enough revenue, like you have enough guys bringing enough revenue, then you can just chill out.
Right.
Right. That's what it should feel like. You should be getting bored. It should be a boring business.
Yeah.
Like in essence, really all you do is you take phone calls, you book the job, you send a guy out to the house, the guy goes and does the work, bills the customer, and then you repeat, right? It's pretty boring. But for some reason, we make that really, really hard. And it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks, Jared.
See you, Holmes.
See ya.